Welcome to the deep dive. So, our mission today for you listening is to unpack this really fascinating curriculum piece by Ben Hod.
Right.
And we're basically looking at this stack of historical accounts, occult theory, and Hod's analysis to figure out how this 19th century occultist, Eliphas Levi, essentially built a physical operating system for high magic.
Yeah, and the reason this material is just so compelling is that it completely shifts our modern understanding of how energetic systems even work.
Totally. Because when we think of physics or, electrical grids today, we picture this very sterile precision.
Exactly, yeah. We think of copper wires, transformers, circuit breakers. It's binary switches.
Right, you flip a switch, the light comes on, it's external, it's very clean.
But Levi's synthesis, it forces us into this world where the actual wiring of the universe is our own biology. Like the circuitry is our breath, the temperature of our hands, our baseline emotional state.
Which is wild. It grounds what we usually think of as this abstract, spooky magic into highly specific bodily sensations.
Yeah, it stops feeling like a fantasy novel and starts feeling a lot more like an electrical science.
Okay, so to really grasp the mechanics of what Levi constructed here, we kind of have to start with the wreckage he was standing in, right?
Oh, absolutely. He was looking backward at this spectacular rise and then the completely catastrophic fall of Franz Anton Mesmer.
Right.
He was trying to salvage the genuine physics that were just buried underneath this massive historical scandal.
Because mesmerism, it's one of those phenomena that completely hijacked a whole society.
Yeah, if you were in Paris in the 1780s, Franz Anton Mesmer was basically the ultimate virile sensation.
He was a Viennese physician, right?
Yes, and he was pushing this concept of animal magnetism. He claimed there was this invisible fluid connecting all living things, and that he could manipulate this fluid to cure, nervous fits and chronic illnesses.
But the actual environment in his Parisian salons, it was less of a medical clinic and more of this wild theatrical fever dream.
Oh, entirely. Mm-hmm. The room would be dimly lit. They'd have these thick curtains drawn and heavy music playing in the background.
And in the center of the room, they had these things called baquets, right? These large circular oak tubs.
Yeah, the tubs. They were filled with magnetized water, crushed glass, and iron filings. And they had these iron rods protruding out from the sides.
It sounds so bizarre. And patients would just sit in a circle holding hands to form a human circuit.
Exactly. Or they would press those iron rods directly against whatever body part was afflicted.
And the reactions were just sheer pandemonium from what the accounts say.
Total chaos. Subjects were swooning, crying out, falling into trances, or having these intense, involuntary convulsions.
While Mesmer himself is just, walking through the room.
Right, wearing a lilac silk robe,
right,
touching people with a magnetized iron wand.
Wow. It became such a massive societal obsession that King Louis XVI finally had to step in and intervene.
Yeah, in 1784, the king actually commissioned a scientific panel to investigate Mesmer's claims. And this panel, it was a roster of Enlightenment heavyweights.
Led by Benjamin Franklin, right?
Yes, who was the American ambassador at the time, and also Antoine Lavoisier.
The father of modern chemistry, so they didn't mess around.
No, they approached it with ruthless scientific method. They blindfolded subjects and told them they were being magnetized when they actually weren't.
Or they'd magnetize them from behind a screen without them knowing.
Exactly. And the results clearly showed that the convulsions only happened when the subjects believed they were being magnetized.
Ah, right. So the commission just concluded that this secret fluid didn't exist at all.
Yeah, they chalked the whole thing up to imagination, physical touch, and just theatrical hysteria.
But there's also a secret supplementary report, right? Delivered straight to the king.
Yes. And that one warned of severe moral hazards because you had these male magnetizers exerting intense psychological control over highly impressionable female subjects.
In darkened rooms.
Right. The sexual overtones and the potential for abuse were just glaringly obvious to the commission. Mm-hmm. So Mesmer was totally ruined, and the practice was dismissed as an elaborate fraud.
I always look at that historical moment like, it's like a viral trend today that gets completely debunked by the authorities.
Oh, no, for sure.
Everyone deletes their posts and pretends they never bought into it. But then, decades later, Eliphas Levi looks at this disgrace and he realizes the Enlightenment scientists basically threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. Levi believed Mesmer had actually stumbled onto a fundamental law of physics. He didn't know how to drive the car safely.
So Levi realized it wasn't just a parlor trick.
No. He thought Mesmer clumsily encountered what Levi called the astral light.
Okay, the astral light. What exactly is that in this context?
Well, in ancient Neoplatonic philosophy, it was known as the okema. which translates to the light vehicle or the chariot of the soul.
Okay.
Levy described it as this universal plastic mediator. It's a dynamic, volatile sea of living fire that literally binds consciousness to physical matter.
So it permeates everything, but it's highly responsive to human will.
Exactly. And Levy's goal was to rescue this really potent force from the sensationalism of Mesmer's tubs and basically rehouse it within a rigorous intellectual framework.
Right, but if the astral light is this real responsive medium, the immediate question is, how does a practitioner actually interface with it?
That is the big question.
Because according to the text, the machinery isn't iron rods or oak tubs anymore. It's right inside our own physical bodies.
Yes. Levy frames this universal force as fundamentally bipolar. It operates on this grand cosmic principle of expansion and contraction.
So it has an active solar coagulating side and a passive lunar dissolving side.
Precisely. And to manipulate a bipolar current, you can't just exert brute force. You need to establish an alternating rhythm. You essentially become a conscious conductor of this universal agent.
And the curriculum points to a very specific physical way to test this, which is so interesting. It involves the microlaboratory of human breath.
I love this part.
Yeah, like if you purse your lips and blow out, compressing the air, the stream of breath feels cold on your skin.
Right, that's the passive lunar dissolving breath.
But then, if you open your throat and exhale slowly like you're fogging up a mirror, the vapor is warm. And that's the active solar coagulating breath.
He is taking these massive hermetic principles and anchoring them directly into human physiology. And he extends this to the polarity of the hands, too.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, in his system, the operator projects heat, an active expansion, from the right hand or the active pole. And if the energetic circuit is successfully completed with the subject will actually feel a cold vacuum.
A passive contraction absorbing that projection.
Exactly.
Okay, but looking at Hazlitt's breakdown of this, my initial reaction is a bit skeptical, I have to admit.
Sure.
Because it almost sounds like Levy is suggesting that high magic is literally just breathing heavily and rubbing your hands together until they're warm.
And Levy completely anticipated that exact skepticism. To separate the initiated craft from those cheap parlor tricks, he draws a very strict line based on the Latin etymology of the words we use for breath.
Oh, right, the distinction between respiration and aspiration.
Yes. Respiration comes from the Latin spirare, which simply means the mechanical act of breathing or exhaling physical air.
Just normal breathing.
Right. But aspiration roots itself in adspirare, which implies a spiritual yearning. It's a conscious drawing inward of the subtle astral light.
So if an uninitiated person sits in a dark room and forcefully alters their breathing, getting all swept up in the somatic sensations, they are literally just hyperventilating.
Exactly. They're altering their blood chemistry and mistaking the dizzying physical exhaustion of hyperventilation for some profound spiritual ingestion.
Wow, so true magic requires the breath to be nothing more than a physical anchor for an intense, singular mental focus.
You've got it. And the text goes even further into the physical requirements, leaning heavily on occult anatomy and classical humoral temperaments.
Yeah, let's frame that for you listening. The humoral theory was this ancient medical belief that human moods and personalities are driven by the balance of bodily fluids.
Right. Blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm.
So someone with an excess of yellow bile was considered choleric, meaning they were highly aggressive, driven, and fiery.
And this is where the operator has to be a master electrician of the subtle body. You have to know the energetic blueprint of the person you're working with.
So what happens if you get it wrong?
Well, if an operator tries to force active, fiery solar energy into a subject who is already overwhelmingly choleric, the whole system overloads.
You aren't creating a circuit, you're pouring gasoline on a fire.
Exactly. Which can cause intense physical distress or aggression in the subject. You have to know exactly where the circuit closes and where it grounds.
Okay, so if the physical alignment between the operator and the subject has to be that delicate, that precise, what happens when the subject brings their own chaotic energy into the room and just disrupts the circuit?
This introduces a fascinating sociological layer to Levy's occult mechanics. He explores this concept of bad faith and the destructive power of unregulated imagination.
Okay, so before we get into this next part, I need to make something really clear to everyone listening. We are about to discuss Levy's views on women as written in his 19th century text.
Right.
We are strictly, impartially reporting what is in this text. We're absolutely not endorsing this. We're not agreeing with his gender bias or arguing against it. We are just examining the historical and philosophical mechanics he was trying to lay out.
Yes, that is a crucial distinction.
Right.
Because Levy uses a term here that is very rooted in the chauvinism of 19th century Paris.
He warns that women, whom he labels as actresses playing out nervous melodramas, are the, quote, true black magic of magnetism.
Right. But looking past the heavy bias of his era, there's a very specific mechanical breakdown he's trying to describe for when a subject derails that energetic exchange.
And the historical context really explains a lot of his anxiety here, doesn't it?
It does. If we go back to those Parisian salons, the primary clientele were aristocratic women suffering under incredibly oppressive bourgeois constraints.
They had basically zero outlets for real emotional expression.
Exactly. So when they were placed under the magnetizer's wand, what emerged was often this complex mixture of genuine somatic hysteria and a subconscious performance.
Because they finally had a socially acceptable stage to release all that pent-up psychological pressure.
Yes, and it completely overwhelmed the magnetizer's control of the ritual.
Plus, we have to add Levy's own personal trauma into the mix.
Right, because he was a radical romantic socialist who passionately participated in the 1848 revolution in France.
So he saw firsthand the terrifying power of mob hysteria.
He watched collective, unregulated emotion literally tear through the streets of Paris. He viewed that same contagious emotionalism as a destructive force that was ruining the esoteric sciences.
Okay, so the actual occult mechanism he is describing with this idea of the actress is really about the projection of a hollow illusion.
Yes, and the text brings up the concept of the Qufat here.
Right. In Kabbalistic tradition, the Qufat are these empty shells or husks that imitate divine light that possess no inner truth.
Exactly. So when a subject operates in bad faith, playing out a melodrama, they are projecting a simulated ecstasy.
And the word actress itself traces back to the Latin ager, right? To project an intentional illusion.
Yes. The subject introduces this turbulent, uncontrolled, imaginative energy into the ritual space. They fool both the operator and the audience into believing a genuine spiritual exchange is happening.
When in reality, it's just a performance of the ego.
Precisely.
I always visualize it like bringing a live microphone way too close to a monitor speaker.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, because the operator's intention is to amplify a clear, directed signal.
Right.
But if the microphone starts picking up its own output from the subject's dramatic performance, it creates this chaotic, screeching feedback loop.
Right, and the operator thinks they're still in charge of the soundboard, but the subject's emotional appetite has completely hijacked the system.
The intended signal is just totally destroyed.
For Livy, white magic is the supreme exercise of reason and equilibrium. Black magic is the surrender of reason to unbridled imagination and chaotic passions.
So when that feedback loop happens, the hierarchy of the ritual is fatally inverted.
The operator, who is supposed to be the active solar pole directing the current, becomes the unwitting victim of the subject's illusion.
Wow. Okay, so if human emotion and the ego are this volatile and the astral light is this responsive to our neuroses, how does an operator protect themselves?
Yeah.
What is Levy's actual safety manual for governing this force without getting consumed by that feedback loop?
Well, Levy states unequivocally that it is impossible to dominate this element unless you are initiated into the supreme arcana and assisted by the light of the Kabbalah.
Okay. Because he describes the raw astral light as a resistant and fugitive element.
Yes. If you try to press upon it with blind personal vanity, it slips through your fingers like mercury. But if you try to carry it without structure, it crushes you like lead.
So you need a geometric container to route the energy. And the text points specifically to the Kabbalistic tree of life, or the Sephiroth.
Right.
I really want to unpack how this actually functions as a mental grid for the practitioner. The tree of life is this arrangement of 10 spheres representing different emanations of divine reality, from pure consciousness all the way down to physical matter.
So instead of a practitioner just opening themselves up to a raw, overwhelming flood of ethereal vibration, they use the tree of life as a sort of cognitive filing cabinet.
Oh, that makes sense.
They mentally map the sensations and the emotional currents to these highly specific structured concepts. It compartmentalizes the energy so the human nervous system doesn't just get completely flooded.
The Kabbalah essentially translates raw vibration into intelligible spiritual mathematics.
Exactly. It acts as the circuit breaker for the cosmic electrical grid.
And by structuring the mind, you insulate the energetic current, which leads to Levy's most counterintuitive advice on how to actually direct this force once you have it contained.
Yes, he applies this to medical magnetizers, and somewhat controversially, to what he calls conjugal politics, or the dynamics of a relationship.
Right. He argues that to truly master a subject, you must never project pure aggressive will.
Because if you meet force with force, the subject's ego instantly throws up a defense mechanism. The fluidic current refracts and just rebels.
So instead, the operator has to skillfully fool the subject into thinking the subject is the one in control.
Exactly. You feign vulnerability, you let the subject believe they are directing the exchange.
Which totally disarms the conscious mind's gatekeeper. And once their defenses are down, the operator guides the current.
Yes.
It operates exactly like an occult martial art, like Aikido or Judo.
Oh, completely.
You completely drop your own resistance, and you use the opponent's own momentum and weight against them to lock them into the alignment you actually want.
It is the ultimate application of leverage over brute strength. And if you connect this to the broader philosophical picture, it perfectly mimics the supreme illusion of nature herself. Well, in Eastern philosophy, this concept is known as Maya. Nature allows humanity to believe we have conquered her with our technology and our reason, all while quietly enveloping us in her grander, inescapable laws.
Wow.
True dominance in Levy's Hermetic framework requires an absolute quiet surrender of the ego.
So you win by appearing to lose in the realm of illusion.
Precisely. And this brings us to the foundational Hermetic law of dynamic equilibrium.
Okay.
The entire system, whether you are breathing, projecting energy from your hands, or managing the psychological state of a subject, it all relies on perfectly balancing two faculties of the soul.
Right, you need the intellect, what Kabbalists call chokmah, which represents divine wisdom acting as the receptive vessel.
Yes. And you also need the emotive will,
Yeah.
acting as the secret fire.
You have to have the architectural knowledge and the emotional application running simultaneously.
Because if you have the intellect without the emotive impulse, the astral fluid stays cold and inert. It's just dead dogma on a page. But if you unleash emotional frenzy without the governing structure of the intellect, you end up with the chaotic hysteria of Mesmer's tubs, or the mob violence of the 1848 revolution.
It's all just chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Without both running in absolute harmony, the astral light cannot be shaped.
Which really perfectly summarizes Levy's massive achievement with this whole synthesis. I mean, he looked at mesmerism, a practice that had literally been tossed into the dustbin of history by the greatest scientific minds of the 18th century.
And he salvaged the core physics of it.
He stripped away the theatrical frights and the superstitious incantations of those old medieval grimoires.
He recognized that the real power wasn't in the wand or the dark room or the iron tub.
No, he took the physical, bodily sensations of magnetism, the thermal shift of the breath, the hot and cold polarity of the hands,
Right.
and he fused them with the supreme intellectual architecture of Hermeticism and the Kabbalah. He turned what had devolved into a chaotic parlor game into a highly disciplined system of internal alchemy.
He really proved that genuine magical power is summoned through precise metaphysical alignment, not just blind spellcraft.
It's fascinating.
It is, and this raises a really profound implication for all of us today, actually, because Levy insists that we are constantly projecting these hot and cold currents naturally.
Just all the time.
All the time. Our daily habits of thought, our fleeting moods, our sudden anxieties, they're all constantly interacting with the astral light.
We are constantly breathing into this universal fluid, whether we realize it or not.
Exactly. So I'd ask you, the listener, to think about your own emotional breath today. Are you deliberately directing your active and passive light with conscious intellect, using a real structure to guide your will?
Or are you just wandering through life, unknowingly exhaling these chaotic, unregulated emotional eddies into your environment, and then wondering why your reality feels so turbulent and unstable?
Something to really mull over.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.